Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, celebrity interviews, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
Welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. But for our radio audience here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM and WYADonline.com, we're glad that you all could be with us. Also tuning in to our friends at iHeartRadio and Amazon Music Podcast. We're glad you all could be with us as well. Well, I think all movie lovers will enjoy this next segment, but I think anyone who has a goal or dream in life in the creative community, I think you all will as well. We're excited to welcome best-selling author and award-winning filmmaker Mary Pat Kelly to our program today. She's celebrating her new book out this year. I have mine on my Kindle here. It's called MARTIN SCORSESE, A Journey. I want to talk to Mary Pat not only about the writing of the book, but also the great conversations she was able to have that others were able to have about Martin, but also I think the lessons all of us can learn, not only about his work ethic, but also his life. If you all are just now hearing about the book, we'll let you know how to get your own copy of it. Mary Pat, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Well,
and
I was
actually,
excited.
You really said the whole theme of the book when you said following your dream, seeing a dream realized against all the odds, and that's what his story really is.
Mary Pat, I'm so glad you said that, and so we can begin the conversation there because you have been known for other types of work, but this book, what I thought was so interesting, yes, it is Martin's story, but I think it really is the creative journey, right? It's kind of all of our story in a sense. What was that like for you to kind of peel back the layers and to be able to see the makings of the man?
It was fantastic. And also, when you said before about creating community, that on all these films, he created a community with the fellow artists, with the actors, with the cameramen. He had such respect for the work of each person, and I think that comes through. But I love what you said in the beginning. I think when you have a lot of dreamers together and they can see a way of making their dreams come true, it does create a community. And, I mean, I felt he empowered me when we met all those over 50 years ago.
Wow. One of the interesting things I wanted to point out from the book, if you don't mind, Mary Pat, was something that Barbara DeFina said. And I love the way that, for those who just now finding out about the book, not only are you able to get these snapshots of Martin's life, but also hearing from people who know him, who've worked with him, have learned from him. And Barbara said something I thought was really interesting, again, with that shared love of bringing stories to life. She said this: Marty loves movies and can watch them 24 hours a day, but to me, a movie is work, and I have trouble just accepting it as a form of entertainment. For Marty, though, movies are not just a reminder of work because he studies them and always finds something new. They're his life. And I think that says so much about why he's had the success. So what was that success like for you to kind of unravel, Mary Pat, and to think about?
Well, I think that is a very insightful quote. And in one part of the book, he said, movies and religion, that's it. Those are my two interests. And he wanted to become a priest early on. I mean, that was our connection. I met him when I was studying to be a nun, and through correspondence, he answered my letter, I think, because it came from St. Mary of the Woods, Indiana, such a beautiful name. But I think, you know, I don't really understand it because it's so deep, but he has a sense of visual language. He's become very involved in film preservation internationally. And I spoke to an African filmmaker. It said he's so grateful to Marty because he's saving African movies, because he has this feeling that visual language is international. You know, it's boundaryless. People can watch a movie and connect to the story, but also to the fellow audience members in a way that there's no barriers. And I think that's what Barbara means, that for Marty, movies were a way of expressing his own imagination, but also feeding his soul. And I think he sees that happening worldwide, and it's a very powerful tool for connection and even peace, not to be too grand, but if we can't talk to each other, what happens? And movies are a way of talking to each other.
What I also thought was interesting too, Mary Pat, was to hear Martin or Marty, as some of those who more lovingly knew him would call him, that we saw in the book. What I thought was so interesting that Martin says was the lessons he learned from others, and one of those examples was with his conversation and interacting and engaging with Marlon Brando. And I love that one part where they came together supposed to be for 5 days, nothing was going on, and then finally actually being able to go for a walk, and then it turning into something. And I love the way he talked about how sometimes you just have to do nothing. I want to talk about that. Do you think part of the success for him too, Mary Pat, is that not only is he great at what he does, but he also does learn and take lessons away from others?
Very interesting that you would say that. In the interview I did with him just in May, we talked about that opening shot of The Irishman, that long tracking shot through the nursing home. It's so evocative. Anyone who's ever been in one of those places really relates the long hallway, the glimpses through the doors. And I said to him, where did you get that? And he said, well, I've spent time in those places. And what you learn is waiting, and ultimately you learn acceptance. And I think Marlon Brando nursing homes, it's not exactly, the same. However, that sense of letting something unfold, of accepting, of waiting, I think is a very profound lesson, because he's a high energy kind of a person. And I think to learn to wait, to look, and to really see and to listen is a great lesson that he learned. And I think it's something that is good for all of us.
And it's someone who's still working all these years later with a new film coming out, of course, next year. I'm curious as to yourself personally, because it's very obvious you spend a lot of time with this, Mary Pat. How did this book, how did it change you?
Well, I did it first because I wanted to make sure. He had been working on Last Temptation of Christ, and I had been working on some of the research, and it looked like it wouldn't get made. And I knew that for all the people that involved, it was a very spiritual journey and something that meant a lot to them. So I wanted to make sure that their thoughts were there. And then I realized it was so fascinating to find out what everyone who was involved in each one of these movies, what they saw, what they brought to it. And I think it gave a sense of community, that there's something wonderful about being involved in this way. I did finally then, after years of being a screenwriter, get to direct a movie. It was Ossie Davis's last movie called Proud. And I saw all the moving parts. And to think that Marty was able to preside over that over and over again and create the atmosphere and the mechanics that allowed these stories to be told, it was really amazing.
I think, too, it shows what it really means to not only to be a creative, but also to be passionate about it. And I say that, Mary Pat, because a lot of people want to do what Martin Scorsese has done for the fame, for the glitz. And it does not seem like, even in the interviews, that was even top of mind for him. In fact, there's that one quote from Richard Romanus in the book that, talking about Mean Streets, said, that you may spend the rest of your life trying to top, one project, right? So how did that, as a creator, because as you've had your own success, what was that like for you to think about for yourself when you kind of looked at your own career?
Well, I understand. I think you nailed it, passion. I think it just happens. It's in your heart, it's in your head. I want to tell the story. I learned the story of my great-great-grandmother, Honora Keeley Kelly, who saved her children from the Great Starvation of 1840s Ireland, brought them to Chicago. Her grandson became the mayor of Chicago. I kept thinking, what a story. Somebody should tell it. And then I realized, well, maybe I'm that somebody. And I think you get hooked. There's a great quote in the new interview that I did with Marty where he says his father used to tell a story, and then he'd say, but nobody would make a movie about that. And Marty said, I thought to myself, why not? Maybe I should make a movie about that. And I think, that is the big insight. I mean, I was talking about being in the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Jackson, and, I loved it. It was like Mardi Gras and celebrating spring and St. Patrick's Day all rolled into one, and it was just regular people. I remember everybody lined up watching, And I thought to myself, that's what life is about. It's about creating community, having a good time with regular people. It's not always stories about famous or elevated people. It's us. And I think that's what Scorsese is doing, and that's what I'm trying to do. Really, that's what you're doing every day, right?
Yeah,
trying to get the story out there.
Exactly. It's a beautiful story. Again, everyone, Mary Pat Kelly has been our guest. Martin Scorsese, A Journey is the book. It's out now to our friends at Amazon.com or your favorite bookstore. Mary Pat, thank you so much for stopping by. I really do appreciate it.
Well, I want to thank you for reading the book with such attention and really getting it. Thank you. That is what makes an author happy.
I appreciate that. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live. Let us go make today amazing. Take care.